Manifest TV.
Good evening, viewers. You're welcome to Manifest TV. My name is Pastor Joy Kihuguru. I host a show called Soaring with Eagles. This is a show that brings Christians from the marketplace, the business world, the corporate world, people that have a story to tell about how the Lord has taken them through the different levels in their lives. People that are soaring, that are scaling in their careers. I'm very happy today to have a special guest on the show. She is a consultant and a school owner. Her name is Dr. Charlotte Muheki. Dr. Charlotte, you are very welcome to this show.
Thank you very much.
And I'm humbled that you were able to, when I asked you to come, you were ready to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pastor Joy.
Yes.
Good evening, viewers. It is a pleasure and an honor to be on set this evening.
Yes. So, Dr. Muheki, could you tell us I think let's start from the time you left S6 and went into the university, because I know that you did a Bachelor of Education in Science. Yes, so start from there.
Thank you.
Yes.
So mine is a long journey. I've been at it for quite a couple of years. I finished my A-levels. I studied here in Uganda. And I ended up in Makerere University many years ago. And at the university, I did a Bachelor of Science with Education, doing mathematics and economics.
Okay.
Yes.
Then after the Bachelor?
After the Bachelor's, I was led to kind of start off a career in South Africa.
Okay.
I did not know much about South Africa, but now when I look back, I believe it was the leading of the Lord.
When you were going to South Africa, were you thinking about teaching?
Actually, although I'd done a Bachelor's in Education, I totally hated teaching. Absolutely.
You know what's funny?
Yes.
I also did a Bachelor of Education, but I didn't want to teach.
Exactly. So I felt that way, and I think the teaching profession in Uganda is not that well promoted.
Yes. It's not motivating.
It's not motivating at all. So I kind of started off saying, I'm doing this Bachelor's, but I will never teach. What was amazing is that at university, when you look at my transcript, I only have A's in teaching practice.
Oh.
So when I look back now many years, I understand that I'm called as a teacher.
Yes.
It is a gift.
Yes.
It's a real gift.
Right.
And even as probably we'll share later in the discussion, it's in the area of my Christianity, that is the place that I identify myself as. I'm not an apostle, I'm not a pastor, I'm a teacher.
You're a teacher.
Yes.
So you went to South Africa and then?
I went to South Africa as a young lady, just immediately after uni. And I think the place of my journey with God starts there. I think He particularly took me out of the comfort place, or what I would call in a familiar place, which is Uganda, your home, where you've been raised, and He totally threw me in a place of the unknown. Being young, obviously, I guess you have an advantage and disadvantage. Disadvantage is that you're not ready for the world because you don't have experience, but advantage is that you're flexible.
Right.
You have the flexibility to do much with your life. So I got there and looked for jobs. And amazingly, the first job, or the obvious jobs that would be available in South Africa, were teaching, as much as I hated it. So I found myself teaching in South Africa. I was teaching mathematics in high school.
Oh.
And it was a beautiful time in the sense that I was, as you called it, I think on your show, Soaring. I was beginning my journey to soar as the eagle, really. So I taught, but because South Africa, their education system, they stop school at 2 p.m., I had a lot of time on my hands. And there was this Ugandan lady who then gave me some guidance. And she said, why don't you do something with this time? Why don't you study as you work? I found myself back at university in South Africa, and I was doing an honors in economics.
So you did an honors degree?
Yes. In South Africa, there's this 1-year course that you do after your bachelor's.
Right.
Because I think their system does not recognize bachelor's at the end of the first degree. So although I had a bachelor's, rather an honors degree from Makerere, in South Africa it was necessary for me to do a 1-year honors in advanced economics. So I studied that, and my career kind of started spiraling from that place. I was picked up at the university because of the way I was performing. I think it was clear that I had a lot of potential. So my lecturer recommended me for a master's. At that time, to be honest, my passion and my need and my concentration was on work. I wanted to work and earn money. I needed to work and earn money because I was kind of supporting some of my siblings and so on and so forth. But I kept seeing, from one study to another to another. So the honors, this gentleman refers me to a master's. And initially I was dragging my feet around it. But one thing led to another quite quickly. I managed to get a scholarship for the master's, and I moved. So in South Africa, I used to live in a place called Mtata, and I moved to Cape Town to do that work on my master's. When I was doing my master's, it turned out that again, I guess, really by the grace of God, I was an excelling student. So I did my master's, I excelled at it, and the University of Cape Town retained me. So they asked me to come back.
All right.
Yes, I'd even already flown out of the country. I'd come back to Uganda to come and look for jobs here, but they quickly offered me a job. Okay. So I found myself yet again on the plane
back to South
Africa. And this time I was going as an employee. So I worked at the University of Cape Town for nearly 6 years as a lecturer and also as a researcher. So that's where my journey of professional or career really starts from. Yes.
Now, Dr. Charlotte, can you tell us whether you faced any challenges when you were in South Africa?
Obviously.
Tell us some stories.
Obviously. I think a couple of what I would call highlights of life happened. As soon as I got to South Africa, when I was here, I wasn't heavily involved in church. I did go to church. In fact, even when I was at Makerere, I would go to St. Francis with a friend. There's a friend of mine who was already she was, I think, coming from a background where they went to church. My background was not very heavily steeped in going to church. So I used to go to St. Francis, but I would attend and I would feel the tug at my heart, but I wasn't quite responding to that. So one of the key milestones, or the first things that God did with me when He took me to South Africa, was to actually allow me to find Him. So that was for me one of the biggest things, and that's about 28 years ago. So that's quite a while.
That's quite a while.
That's quite a while ago. So I got born again, and there was this lady. She was Ugandan. She lived in South Africa as a young girl. I think I was about 22-ish. She started picking me from my house because I had no transport. I didn't know how to get to church. So she took me and started taking me to church every Sunday. Would take me to her home for meals, and then she would take me back home. So my journey kind of starts there. But as you asked about challenges, I think the first challenge, just like probably any young person, was the adjustment. Here I was just at 22, thrown in another country where you're on your own. I struggled. The conditions I was living in were very, very strenuous. It was very challenging. The money that I was earning while I was teaching was so little that all I could do with it was parent, get my transport to take me to work. There was very little money that I used to send to my sister because she was at university, and then I had nothing left. I recall there's a gentleman, and I think recently I've been thinking about looking him up, a Ugandan gentleman who came out, and I think when he had my story, he offered me help. So I remember going through a life where you're in a foreign country, but you can't even afford food.
Oh my.
Yes. So that was one of the challenges that I found. This gentleman helped me quite a lot. He allowed me to access meals easily, which he paid for and so on. And I transitioned from that, very hard place. Then maybe the other example that I can give in around South Africa, my career was flying. It was excellent. I was working hard. I didn't have any. I had obligations because I was helping some of my siblings, but I didn't have family and baggage and what.
Yes.
But while I was there, and during the course of doing my PhD, I met a Ugandan gentleman somehow in some interesting circumstances, and eventually it led to starting a marriage.
Okay.
Or rather, starting the journey of being married. It quite hit the rocks pretty much at the beginning, and at that time, in the process, I had my first child.
Okay.
So one of the challenges was having a child in a foreign country alone with no help.
Because your husband was in another country.
Yes, okay. He was in another country. So being a first-time mother, living alone, working, having a child, and your marriage is a bit shaky. Was quite a bit of a difficult time. That was quite hard.
Oh, that was quite hard.
Yes.
So did you have you have 2 children?
Yes, I have 2 biological children and many other children. I am a mother of many.
So when you came back to Uganda is when you got your second child?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then you were in Uganda for how long before you had to go back to South Africa?
No, I stayed after I came back to. I just came for when I worked in South Africa. Every December I came home. So I just come home for about a month.
Oh, that in South Africa is where you were there for 6.
Yes, I was there 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. So that's when you also had that's when you had your first child.
I had my first child in South Africa.
Okay.
And then the marriage ran into issues. And by that time, when I came back here, I realized it's going to be very challenging to raise a child by myself in a foreign country without help. So I opted to come back, or at least let me know when I think the right way to say it is by the leading of God. One of the December holidays when I got back, I put my CV around. I went to all organizations. I went to the Ministry of Health, because then I was trained as a health economist. I went to various places and left my CV introducing myself. So when I went back to work, one of the places opened up for me, the job. So the minute I realized that now I have a job opportunity back home, I came back home.
You came back home.
Yes.
Okay. So what happens after that?
Well, many things. Many things happen. I think one of the key things that happened was when I got back, there was an opportunity for us to go back and speak about the marriage which had kind of disintegrated.
Was shaking.
Yes. So we sat down and said, look, let's give this a shot. Let's find help. Let's speak to counselors and let's be helped.
Yes.
We kind of did that a bit and we came back together. That's how come eventually now I got the second child.
Yes.
Yes. I settled back into Uganda.
But he was still...
No, he was in Uganda.
Oh, he came back
yes,
also.
He came back to Uganda. So then what was involved was really getting established back here. I was in a job, I was quite fortunate to be in a job. Worked well, and then but the job was a bit short term. It was about a year only. It had towards the end, it also had its own issues, but maybe those are for another day. And then the Lord started leading me into consulting. So as much as I tried to look for jobs, only consulting assignments were coming up, and there were multiple. So I thought, okay, why not? Like, I have the skills, I have the time, they pay well, so let me work as a consultant. So I consulted, I did many jobs, I trained other young people. So that's one of my biggest highlights of generally life, is that I've raised other health economists. Several of them, and they are in good positions. They've taken up jobs in the UN and various other places. So, as I mentioned, now we have 2 children. I'm a Christian in all this. remember I'm a Christian from back in the day.
Yes.
Um,
You're born again now.
yes, I was born again quite early, even before I got into the marriage.
Yes.
I was born again. So as we continued in this life together in the marriage, it kept, it was quite challenging, I must say, and that's really, to put it mildly. It was quite complex. Of course, I look back and see many things that, were responsible for that challenge. But it was a very, very challenging time. So here you are, a mother of 2 young children in a very unhappy and unstable marriage, and obviously trying to balance a career.
The career,
Yeah.
yes.
So in all those years, when I look back, the Lord was with me. I don't think clearly he didn't let me fall through the cracks.
Right.
Because potentially I could have
mentioned
done that.
to me when I had a one-on-one with you that you see yourself as a Joseph.
Yes, yes. When I started reading the word quite more intimately, I used to, Joseph is a very inspiring story. But I think the very first thing when I was reading, and I found a bit of controversy. You read and you found that Joseph was sold by his brothers. And then they say, then the people who bought him sell him to Potiphar. And then the next sentence says, but the Lord was with Joseph.
him.
And you're like, okay, there's a controversy. There's contradiction. Yes. Then, of course, he works quite well. He's excellent. He's blessed. He's prosperous. He's prospering. He's boss. And then he runs into the Potiphar situation. Sorry, Potiphar's wife situation. And then the word says, but the Lord was with Joseph. I'm like, but it looks unfair. It doesn't make sense. Yes. But now that I'm obviously much more in the word and in understanding, I see that I did walk places which were challenging, but the Lord was with me.
With you.
And is still with me up to this day. So I think that's one of the biggest encouragement I can give people.
Right.
Is don't look at the circumstances and think God has left you. He has all the details. Even what looks unfair, what looks complicated, what looks challenging, his hand, the minute his hand is still upon you, nothing will take you out. So if I just go back to then the career progression, I continued building my career, but also helping other people start their career. And I think for me, what's one of my biggest highlights is that there's a couple of people I can mention. Of course, I'm not going to mention them here, but I got there. They came to me from university, had no skill. We worked together. They put in obviously their effort. I cannot claim 100%. They were interested. But the opportunities were given to them. The hand holding happened, and now they are soaring quite high, which is impressive. I love that very much. So over the years, I've had to parent children single-handedly.
Single-handedly.
But the Lord was with Charlotte. Yes, it has been an interesting journey. It has been a beautiful journey. Even with its ups and downs, I've seen the hand of God in everything.
And I've noticed that your children are really involved in ministry.
They are.
At church. That is a very admirable thing.
Thank you.
Yes. So so did you mentor them from the time they were young?
Yes.
Yes.
From the minute, everything that, of course they had toys like every other child can have, but I remember specifically investing in stories around Jesus. So from the outset, their whole world view was shaped around God created you, God loves you, and so on. So I mentored them from very early, because by that time, obviously I was struggling with other issues like the marriage problems. So my whole heart was with God.
Yes.
My anchor, my focus, my help, my everything. And that is where I led my children. We went to church, we read books, we prayed together. Any example that I gave around life was about God helping us and God doing things for them. So they got to know God quite early.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So now you've come back to Kampala. You're now a consultant. So is that what you now do? Of course, we know that you're also school owner.
Yes.
Yes, but so can you tell us a bit about that? How did you get into becoming a school owner?
An interesting journey. So around 2020, 2018. I was going to say 2028. I'm very forward.
Forward, yes.
Yes. So around 2018, my children were in school, just like any other children. And the Lord started impressing upon my heart the fact that He wanted me to have them educated a little bit differently. And what that means is, while they were having excellent academic progression and grounding, there were aspects of skilling that a school couldn't take on, or at least it can't take on for so many students. So the Lord started speaking to me about creating an environment where my children are exposed to skills quite early. And my parenting journey is one where I look at parenting as a stewardship. And we know for a stewardship, it is mentioned in the word that it's required of a steward to be faithful. That is the expectation of a steward, or what is required of them.
Right.
And stewards always account back. I think you remember the story of the 5 talents, the 2 talents, and so on. So God made it very clear that I was a steward in parenting, and that He was going to come back and cause me or require me to account. So I had to then take the journey. I had to hear God, and I had to be obedient. So I had to then take these kids out of what you call conventional school and set up a similar school system that handles the academics, but also that takes them through other opportunities to be skilled.
What system is that?
So my children went through the Accelerated Christian Education.
Okay.
And that's the school they were
SCE.
in. Yes, that's SCE.
How did you get to know about SCE? Was it from
again? I kind of
research?
stumbled on it.
Yes.
Maybe just taking 1 or 2 steps backwards. My children were in the Ugandan system. Of course, we know that our Ugandan system, for instance, in the primary, emphasizes a child getting a 4.
Yes.
And every parent aspires for that. Of course, not every child can really get a 4.
That's
true. They're all not at that level. But I think what for me was a wake-up call one time is I was revising with my son, and we had revised science, and he was ready for his exams, which he did. And when he brought back his paper, there's one particular number he had failed, which I knew we had revised together. So I sat down and said, "What happened? Did you forget?" He said, "No, I had put in the right answer, and the teacher asked me to rub it." So I thought, in an exam. So, but prior to that, I had been seeing some of the way, the values that are espoused in the school were quite different from the ones I was trying to raise at home. So I could see that there's a clear disconnect between what I'm trying to teach at home and what the school teaches.
Yes.
And I knew that ultimately the children are going to be confused because the school does one thing, at home you do another. So really, what is truth and what is right? So it was on the basis of that I decided I needed to find a better school. And this time I was looking for a school that had similar values like the ones we're espousing at home. And that's how I ended up in SCE. So that's how I did the round around. I checked a couple of schools. I tried to understand how the school works. And when I found SCE, I was satisfied.
You were satisfied.
Yes.
You felt that was what you wanted your children to pursue.
Exactly.
Yes. So, Dr. Charlotte, we are going to go into a break. You continue with the story of how you ended up becoming a school owner. So, viewers, we'll be right back after this break.
It's supernatural, it's uplifting, it's spiritual grounding at its best in television. A place for your spiritual nourishment daily 24/7, 365 days all year round. Experience the Word of God back to back with a great lineup of programs for you, your friends, and family.
Manifest TV on StarTimes Channel 241, GoTV Channel 819, Free-to-Air Channel 19. Or better still, for your convenience, you can watch Manifest TV wherever you are on your mobile phone using the Phaneroo mobile app. Manifest TV, Christ Revealed.
Do you like it when God gets personal? Introducing the recently updated Phaneroo app with its all-new features that gives you a highly personalized experience. Now you can watch Phaneroo video sermons, previews, and listen to your favorite audio sermons, or better still, download them on your phone for your offline experience. Wake up every day to a fresh devotional which you can share directly with friends and family. Watch Manifest TV live on the go, wherever and whenever. Do you have a prayer request, a testimony, or you want to give to the ministry? The all-new Phaneroo app has all that in one place. And of course, you can receive timely notifications to help you stay up to date with all the ministry programs. Whatever you're looking for, we have got you covered. Download the Phaneroo app from Google Play and Apple App Store to enjoy this personalized experience.
Welcome back from the break. Before we went into the break, I was having a conversation with Dr. Charlotte Muheki, who was telling us about her journey from Makerere and how she ended up in South Africa, did some teaching there, and then ended up coming to Uganda, and she's now a consultant, but also a school owner. But she was telling us a bit. Dr. Charlotte, you were telling us about your children. Now, how you wanted them to be in the SCE system.
Yeah.
Yes. So
thank you very much, Pastor Joy. So I realized that one of the things that God started opening up to me to understand is that education was more than school. And I realized that, of course, having been educated in the typical Ugandan system, education is equal to mathematics, English, literature, and so on. So God started showing me that children needed to be educated beyond just the academics. And that for that to happen, we must have time for those other things. And in that, there are two types of skills that God made clear for me to pay attention to. It's what we call the soft skills and the hard skills. The soft skills are the skills we need to live in the world and function as adults. The empathy, the socialization, the resilience, the communication, those are soft, and unfortunately schools don't teach those things. The hard skills is for any person, or for that matter a child in this case, to be able to do something with their hands or with their brain, together with their hands. So when I moved my children, or when God asked me to move them, He said, you're going to set up a system where they can do the academics and other things. So that's how I sort of started.
So you started with your two children?
I started with my two children. I set up everything. I had an extra sort of guest wing at my house. So I set that up as a school, everything. In fact, it was obvious that, you know, if you went this side, it was school. If you went this side, it was home. But it was in the same compound. I went for training myself. I got one other person who got trained as well, who would assist me because I was still working full time. Oh, yes. So I ran that school for my two kids and started off making sure that, you know, they have all the materials and so on. And in that system, or at least in the school where they were now, school ended at lunchtime.
Oh.
And that is how I wanted to create the time to do other things.
Yes.
So they learned,
what other things are you talking
they did
about?
piano. My daughter, as you were mentioning, served here in this ministry where we go to. I think she served there for about 7-8 years, doing photography. She was in the media team. And what we did was I made sure I bought her all the equipment because I could see that she has an interest in photography. So she did that. She did a bit of piano. She was an avid reader. She read a lot. So she had time to read and so on. My son was more computer leaning. So he started teaching himself actually.
Okay.
I started teaching himself a lot of programming, coding, website development, and so on. So you can see that is also education. In fact, I think my son, by age 12, 13, he could build a website for for payment. So that is what I did with them. And with time, God started bringing me more children. And that's how the school became established. Yeah. And
wow. Yes. So it's now running.
It is up and running.
Yes.
We run the same concept. Of course, some parents struggle with this skilling, additional skilling thing, but it is the way to go. In fact, it is the way to go because even I've noticed that government has now tried to change the education system, which has been for a very long time focusing on only academics. And now they are saying children should be skilled, children should know how to do other things. And that is the right direction because all that is education. Beyond that, also there were other educational experiences for my children. Traveling and going somewhere, that is education. Some people think, this is just vacation and what, and in a sense it is, but actually go and see what else is there.
Exposure.
Yeah, first see your first skyscraper. It's not in Uganda.
Right.
If you have an opportunity to do that. Also within Uganda, go places, go to the mall, go to the parks, go to... All that is education, but people don't think. People think you're a tourist, but there's a certain learning thing which is happening, both for even as an adult, but for children especially.
Right.
I think by that time, I remember there's one time we had there was a conference here, and a conference on artificial intelligence and all these other things. And I remember it happened in a week. So when there was school. That's when I still had my children only. I think I had my children and my one other student. And for us, I remember we paid for the conference. We went in at the conference was at the Serena, and I think it ran for 2 days. And there were the only 2 kids there were 3 actually. There were only 3 kids in the conference.
The rest were adults.
Everyone was an adult because it was a conference. It was this huge conference. I think when the president was supposed to come and officiate. But I saw it as an educational opportunity. So they came, they sat in. First of all, they say, what is a conference? That alone is education.
Right.
So we went into groups and they listened to different things. They not only learned content, but also they learned what they experienced, what it means because I used to travel quite a bit when they were young, and I would tell them I have to present at a conference. So how does a child understand what their mother is doing when they say, I'm traveling to such a country, and I'm making a presentation at a conference? What is that? So now they had an opportunity to sit in a conference and see what happens in a conference, go for this. Of course, for them, they were excited. But it was educational. Just like when you look back in the day, there were almost attempts at similar things, but of course differently. If you remember, we went to the zoo. I think almost every school goes to the zoo. We went to a sugar factory,
the
museum, and so on. And I'm glad that those things used to happen, but they were not enough. A lot more could be done with students to expose them to so many other things. Yes.
So, Dr. Charlotte, I want to now take you back to your childhood. I had a one-on-one with you, and I was really inspired when I had everything you had to tell me about your childhood, and how some of the things that we go through in our childhood will affect us in our adulthood. And if we don't deal with them, they will have repercussions in the future. Okay. So tell us a bit about your childhood.
Wow. Okay. I'm young, so I remember my childhood.
Yes.
Yes, so I grew up in Uganda. I was born and raised here in Uganda. And I had what I would call a mixed childhood. Mixed in the sense that there were some good things, but also there were some not so good things. So growing up, I think my earliest memory that I can think of is around age 7. I mean, it was a bit unfortunate for us as children, or but God, I think when I look back, God knows what He was doing. My parents went separate ways. I was the eldest child, and I think one of the things that I remember about my childhood is I felt a lack of sense of security. I did not feel secure because I didn't feel like, or not feel, it's not even a feeling, the fact that there was no one watching over me as a child ought to.
Right.
Because around about that age 7,
You need your mother.
You need someone who figures out whether you've eaten or you've gone to bed or your clothes are okay and so on. So immediately when my parents went separate ways, there was that immediate void of feeling very insecure. And different people react differently in those circumstances. Of course, I have siblings, and I guess all of us handled it differently. But my personal one was one where I had to figure life out for myself. That was my response. I realized, oops, there's no one who is coming to help me, so I better figure out how to survive. So it is obvious that my reaction to that situation was that of, let me take care. And it had some, obviously when you get a sense of responsibility quite early, it's good because hopefully you get your life organized.
Yes.
I remember because that is the stance I took, and also because I think as eldest, now a lot of expectation was put on me. Make sure that your siblings are this, and make sure that so. But also, it started. I started owning it, and much later, when I did a bit of reading around psychology, I realized there's a certain term called parentizing. This is taking a child and you make them a parent at the wrong time.
Age.
And that is what happened to me. It was immediately I kicked in. First of all, I had to be my own parent. Then I had to be a parent for my siblings. So I entered my survival mode, and it kind of worked for me. And I went through school normally, with obviously those circumstances.
With good schools.
Yes, but I think for me, school became the escape route. Because one of the things I figured in my head, I don't know how that came around, was if I have to be successful, I have to excel at my school. So that was now the place where I shifted my focus. So I was a very studious student. I was very, focused on my academics. I wanted to perform well. I wanted to excel. And by the grace of God, I did, which was beautiful. So I went through school without any crisis, no major issue. I did well all the way up to university. Now, moving a little bit forward into the years when you want to make certain decisions. Of course, there's some decisions around, say, university, like the course you end up doing and so on. There's a bit of decision making there. But I find that the key decisions that you make are slightly after that. Of course, you make up the decision to study and pass and finish, say, the university degree. So moving on, I then started, as I told you, as in South Africa, I was working at a university. I was now getting to the age of what is life now? What does it mean? I have a job. I was dying to get a job, and I was dying to get an income. Now I have them, so what now? And obviously, I was moving into the age of marriage. I can put it that way. So here I was faced with a key decision-making opportunity to think through that. I was completely unguided at that time. I was unguided, obviously, as a young child.
Yes.
But now here I was completely unguided around a key decision like that. I was out of the country. I was not in touch with my parents. I didn't have any other guidance. So I come up to meet a gentleman and eventually became my husband, but without any guidance. I was a Christian, but I made some mistakes, I must say. I made, let me call it a key major mistake around about that decision. But beyond making the mistake, because obviously if I had had guidance, if I had had oversight, if someone else was saying, bring this person to lunch, let me, because I do it for other people now.
Now that's
yes,
what you
people,
do.
Yes, people come and say, I've met someone, I would like you to meet them and pray for us and see for me, help me, am I on the right track? Now I do, that's why I said I'm a mother of many earlier. So I do that for many other people. I didn't have such a person. So I was making this decision all by myself. I saw this man, he said this, I believed him, and we said this is what we want to do.
There was no one you were accountable to.
I was not accounting to anyone. No one was asking me. No one was following me up. But that is one thing. I think the most important thing that I want to share on set here is how much broken I was by the time I was getting into the marriage. So quite apart from not making a good choice, and here by saying that, I'm not saying my husband was a bad person. I'm trying to say maybe if I'd had proper guidance, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in that direction. But apart from that, apart from even not making a good decision, I was broken. I was a broken person. And I think, as you mentioned in your intro, what happens to us in childhood remains in us until we deal with it. If we don't sit down and acknowledge it and find help, it remains. It doesn't go away. No matter how old. You can even be 70 and still have childhood issues following you up. And at the time when I was getting married, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this. And now I see that, for instance, my children are very self-aware. Like, I can have a conversation with my daughter. She's only about 21. And she'll say, this year I want to focus on self-discovery. Like, I didn't have that kind of thinking at that age. I just knew you finish, you get a job, you finish getting a job, you work, you get married, you have children. That was how I was thinking. But here is a young person, now in her age, who is able to say, I have some questions about life. I want to discover myself. And those are the kind of opportunities I didn't have.